Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and for all of December and January, we're breaking down every installment in WWE Royal Rumble history as seen on the WWE Network. And today we're talking about the Royal Rumble 1997. So kicking off the show for the Intercontinental Championship, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Triple H, defending the IC title against Goldust. Pretty good match. You can rarely go wrong with an IC title match to kick off a show. Both these guys worked well together. I'm pretty sure it was WrestleMania that year that they had their match at WrestleMania. Or, yeah, well, of course it was, because in '96, Triple H faced Warrior. So this was not the end of the line for the feud, because they had another match at WrestleMania. And the finish kind of was designed to keep the feud going after interference from Mr. Hughes, and Marlena was kind of interfering at ringside as well on behalf of Goldust. So the finish, while it was kind of like a non-finish and kind of throwaway, whatever, I understood it because knowing where this went in a conclusion of a match at WrestleMania, I believe, I could be completely off there, but I'm pretty sure they faced off at WrestleMania that year, WrestleMania 13. So I was fine with that, but the match itself was good. They worked well together. Triple H was kind of coming off of being buried after the click, the whole curtain call thing. So had a nice little run as IC champion here. That was good to see. Goldust worked well with him. He was always a great athlete. Nice opening match, probably one of the better matches in the whole show, but good stuff. Good result with Triple H retaining the title. So after that, we had Ahmed Johnson taking on Farouk of the Nation of Domination. A decent match, not great, but better than I thought it would be. I knew Farouk has always been a good worker, Ron Simmons, whatever. Ahmed Johnson was always mega over in like the mid-90s, late 90s before he got the cut. But he was never like an amazing worker. Like, to me, I watch him and I think of like an Ezekiel Jackson. Not just because they're both black or something dumb like that, but just because of their sheer size, the way they were built, their one-off reigns as Intercontinental Champion, the way they were over for a short period of time. That's what I think of when I see Ahmed Johnson, so I never really expect him to have great matches with whoever he's in the ring with. But he did have a pretty decent match here, mostly due to Farouk and him carrying him to a competent contest. Try saying that 5 times fast. And it ended after Nation of Domination interfered and Farouk got disqualified. But Ahmed Johnson with the Pearl River Plunge, I believe it was called his finisher, he hit that on one of the members after the match through one of the commentary tables at ringside. I forgot. Might have been D'Lo Brown. I don't think it was Farouk. I don't remember. But it was a 6 spot, though. Looked awesome. The match was better than I thought it would be. Not to say it was great, but it exceeded expectations. It was a decent match with a great post-match attack from Ahmed Johnson on the Nation of Domination. So after that, we had The Undertaker taking on Vader. And what you would think would be like kind of like a dream match, it wasn't that good of a match at all. Very slow and plodding. Which is to be expected, but you think of Vader as one of the best big men, I would say in WCW history, but I would go as so far as to say as one of the best big men in wrestling, period, in WWE, just, in wrestling history. The guy could go, but that being said, he didn't really mesh too well with Undertaker. He had a decent little run here. This was around the time that Paul Bearer was still feuding with Undertaker, so he sided with Vader here. The match was alright, wasn't anything great, wasn't a complete shit fest. Like, big man versus big man matches just rarely ever work. There are some times where you can't get a good match out of them, but in this case, it was alright for what it was. Vader, in the end, went over, got a big win over The Undertaker. It's just a shame they never really did anything more with Vader in the years that followed. He wasn't there that much longer. He might have been gone by, 99 even? 90, 2000? I'm not exactly sure, but they never really utilized him to his full potential. He kind of hit like a glass ceiling in the form of Taker or Austin or whoever. Michaels in 96 had a great series of matches with him. But then after that, with the exception of this one feud with Taker, they never really did anything with him, which was always mind-boggling to me because you can make a great babyface or a great heel or whatever, and people cared about him regardless, so I never really understood. And he was a great athlete to boot, so I never really understood why they never really did much more with him than just what they did in the few years that he was with WWE. So after that, we had a 6-man tag team match with Hector Garza, Para Aguayo, Kanek, defeating Jerry Estrada. I'm just reading the names off of Wikipedia. I completely forgot who these people were. Jerry Estrada, Heavy Metal, and Feruza Guerrera. So, of course, I am familiar with none of these people, with the exception of Paraguayo, who was not the Paraguayo who passed away earlier this year. He was like 17. He was mentioned at the time. He was mentioned several times by the commentators at ringside. This was actually his father, and then the Paraguayo who passed away earlier this year was Paraguayo Jr. It was a fun little match. The crowd couldn't have cared less, though. It was very, very obvious that WWE was trying to capitalize off the momentum that WCW was having with their cruiserweights and their luchadors over in their company. it just never worked. They brought in these guys from AAA. I believe that's where they were from. And then they instituted the light heavyweight championship, and it didn't work. There were some good matches, some good athletes, but I couldn't name half of the cruiserweights or half of the lightweights that WWE had in the late 90s, early 2000s before they just got rid of the belt altogether, and they ended up bringing over the cruiserweight division when WCW went under in 01. From an in-ring standpoint, it was a good match, but because the fans knew nothing about any of the people involved, I didn't really care. It's different than, I don't even know, like something like today or what they ended up doing with ECW, and where fans are more familiar with who's in the match. Like if we had a match, like a showcase match from like a CZW or a Northeast Wrestling or even like a Lucha Underground, which would never happen because WWE is so controlled nowadays. They would never allow a promotion to have, showcase a promotion on a pay-per-view like this, much less the Royal Rumble. So, but it would be cool. It kind of got me thinking, well, the match was really nothing of note, and people may not really react to a match from Lucha Underground because it would be choreographed completely differently than it is over there. Maybe not even a TNA match, but like an indie promotion, like a Ring of Honor, or like if you had a Roderick Strong versus Jay Lethal match in a Royal Rumble pay-per-view, I don't see why not. And they've kind of thrown them a bone in the past by featuring them on their website and in videos and mentioning them on TV and whatever. So it's not like Ring of Honor doesn't exist in the WWE universe, because it does. TNA doesn't exist, but a Ring of Honor showcase match would be pretty cool. It's like the ECW, working relationship they had with ECW back in the early 2000s, late 90s. And I think there's something that would be pretty cool, as long as it wasn't, I don't know. Like I said, like a TNA wouldn't really make sense, especially at this point where they don't even acknowledge TNA, but it's a lot like what they used to do or have sometimes done with NXT. A few times in the last year or so, they've had NXT guys and girls come on the show and, compete in matches against each other or against fellow main roster members. So kind of giving the NXT guys more exposure. That's probably the most they'll ever get out of, exposure from other companies or brands, I guess, because NXT is WWE, on a WWE product. But I don't know, I feel like it'd be cool if they did something along those lines with like a company like Ring of Honor. I doubt they ever would, but it would be cool though. It's not like Ring of Honor ever has a chance of beating out WWE like financially or something, so I don't really see what the harm is. But anyway, after that we had the 30-man Royal Rumble match that was won by Stone Cold Steve Austin after he lastly eliminated Bret Hart. A pretty good Rumble. The early goings of it weren't really all that exciting at all, just because a lot of the people were either jobbers, people I didn't really give a shit about or didn't know. But down the stretch, it really started to hit me how many stars that WWE had at one time. Although they may not have been stars at that point in time, they would become, over time, I guess. They had, at one point in the final stretch of the Rumble, they had Stone Cold in there, The Undertaker. I don't know if they had Triple H in there, Hunter Hearst Helmsley. I don't know if they did, but they had Stone Cold, Bret Hart, The Rock, Undertaker, Stone Cold, Bret Hart, The Rock, Vader, and maybe somebody else. So they had a bunch of different stars, the biggest stars from the 90s, early 2000s in the match, at one point down the stretch, which was an incredible sight. And it made for a pretty cool Rumble. Taker and Vader furthered their feud. In the end, Stone Cold Steve Austin was eliminated, but the referee didn't see it, so he came back in, took out Bret Hart, and earned a title shot at the WWE Championship in the main event of WrestleMania. The only issue is that he would not get that title shot. He would cash it in at the following pay-per-view in a fatal four-way match at one of the in-your-house pay-per-views, and he would lose, and he faced Bret Hart at WrestleMania instead. And I'll get to that after the main event. I'll talk about what happened afterwards. So the main event was Shawn Michaels contending for the gold, the WWE Championship against Psycho Sid. A good match, not a great match. I thought, Psycho Sid is one of those guys that was never a great worker. So the reason why he was in like the main event of WrestleMania 8 or whatever was, or no, wait, Psycho Sid Justice, whatever. Same guy I'm thinking of here. He was never a great worker. You had a select few people who could get a passable match out of him. And surprisingly, Shawn Michaels was one of those people. They had a very good match, what I thought, at the 96 Survivor Series, a very good show. And a hot-ass crowd in MSG, so that was a great title change when Psycho Sid won the belt. Shawn Michaels would win the belt back here. I thought it was too soon. He would vacate the belt anyway the next month, which I'll, again, talk about in a second. But in terms of match quality, I thought it was good. There was a lot of interference from Jose Lothario and his son, I think, and a whole bunch of other people, but so that kind of hindered it a little bit. But even still, I thought the match of the Survivor Series the year prior was pretty better. It was a lot better. Was pretty good. Yes, decent match. Shawn Michaels, your new WWE champion. So here's what happened. So after that, Shawn Michaels, from what I understand anyway, the original plan was to do him and Bret Hart at WrestleMania, give Bret Hart his win back by beating Michaels, who was going to be the then champion going into WrestleMania. But I guess Shawn Michaels, reportedly, this was never really confirmed, but he didn't want to do the JOB to Bret Hart at WrestleMania, so he feigned a knee injury. They wrote him out of TV. And he was at WrestleMania dancing around like he was never ever injured, so that was kind of stupid. But anyway, that he would forfeit the title after he lost his smile in mid-January, or mid-February rather. And then the Fatal 4-Way match at In Your House turned into a championship match between Bret Hart, Psycho Sid, Stone Cold, and I'm pretty sure Vader as well. Or no, Taker. I'm not exactly sure. I'm pretty sure it was Taker because he faced Psycho Sid at WrestleMania. Anyway, Psycho Sid would win that match. No, Bret Hart would win that match. And then Psycho Sid would beat him for the belt on fucking Raw. It was a total clusterfuck. And then Taker would beat Psycho Sid for the belt at WrestleMania. And then we got Stone Cold and Bret Hart at WrestleMania instead. And Stone Cold did not go for the championship until the following year at WrestleMania after he won the Rumble again in 98. So, from what I understand, that's what happened. The whole clusterfuck of a WWE title scene with everything else happening, the politics and the injuries, quote-unquote injuries happening, and just whole mess going into WrestleMania. I didn't even really like that WrestleMania anyway, with the only match, the only really good match in my opinion being Stone Cold and Bret Hart. Needless to say, everything else I thought was dumb. My whole review of that show is already up here on the channel from earlier on in the year during WrestleMania season if you want to check it out. WrestleMania 13. But as far as this show goes, a decent show, kind of middle of the road. I thought the undercard matches, there really wasn't anything must-see. I mean, we had a new WWE champion crowned in the main event. That was a good match. But the undercard, the IC title match I thought was pretty fun. Aqua Johnson and Farouk was okay. Vader and Taker was okay. The six-man matchup with the Luchadors was kind of boring because I didn't really know who anyone was. I'm sure that was, the same can be said for the crowd. They didn't really give a shit about that match either. The Rumble was pretty good. I don't know if I would call this a must-see show, but it's not one that I would stray away from watching. So if you have the time, check it out. I think it clocks in around 2 hours and 51 minutes, I believe, so you can check it out on the network at your leisure. But in the meantime, between time, folks, I'll be back on Saturday with my full review of Royal Rumble 1998. And until then, you guys can check me out on Twitter at WrestleRant, on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.Juicem.Matthews. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. All support is greatly appreciated. And until then, guys, have a great rest of your weekend. Hopefully, you guys had a great Christmas this past week. And, this is our last WrestleRant of 2015. I completely forgot about that. We'll be back in the new year on Saturday the 2nd with my review of... Is it the 2nd on Saturday? Yes, it is. Well, so first WrestleRant video of the new year, as I mentioned, will be Royal Rumble 1998 review. So until then, guys, have a great rest of 2015. I'm Graham Juicem Matthews, and I'll catch you folks down the road.